got a melodic beginning to the whole solo. And what I did at the beginning was I did this octave thing. So I'm sliding into the 11 and the 3. And I hit the octave of that, which is on the 14 of the first string, of course. With vibrato to taste. So a little bit of bending on the 14th fret there, but just doing a half step. Some trilling going on there, so we got 15, 14, 15, 14, and then sliding to the 12. So, and then hammering on the 14, 12, 11 on the first string, and then a little vibrato there. So again, the whole thing. So, and as you probably noticed with the vibrato, sometimes I'm using my fingers, sometimes I'm using the vibrato, and I'm not sure. I think what happened at some point, instead of using the whammy, I think one day I just couldn't find my whammy bar, and decided to just start grabbing the system itself, and it's just actually become more comfortable for me. So now I don't even use the bar anymore. So, kind of strange, but true story. So. So there, quite simply on the second string goes. So basically just the notes that I'm using are on the second string. It's going to be 13, 12, 13, 15, back down, and then landing on the 14 of the third string. Put all that stuff together. Got the little trill there, but you see what's going on. Then after that, I'm doing a little tapping thing, which I really very rarely do. But in this song, it seemed to have a little bit of a call for it, so I did it. So it goes like this. And then switching to the second string. So quite simply, all I'm doing with the left hand is at 12, 15, 17. Tapping on the 19 and fluctuating between the 19 and the 20. And then on the second string, the same idea. And then sliding at the end from the 19 to the 20. So. As far as warming up, like before gigs and stuff like that, or recording, it's pretty much, I mean, you know, I might practice some, you know, the chromatic kind of, you know, all that kind of stuff. These kind of things are really helpful just to kind of get things moving, the left hand, the right hand, and just the whole thing. But that's pretty much what I do before live performance. It's all about, you know, just stretching out, you know, both just, you know, your body as well as, of course, playing. But I don't have any specific like things I'll do, like, you know, specific scales or whatever, like a, you know, a strict kind of. I just kind of just jam, you know, which is again the same as what I do when I practice just on my own. And the same thing for studio, pretty much for the same. You know, I'll put on an album, play along, just kind of get warmed up with my rhythms and my solos and stuff like that. And that's pretty much about it. Yeah. Well, over time, it's kind of an interesting thing because initially, you know, when I was trying to develop I had a tone in my head, which was inspired mostly from an Ozzy album, which is called Speak of the Devil. The guitar player that played on this particular live recording, for those that know, is Brad Gillis. And it was an album basically Ozzy did in the early 80s, which was all Sabbath tunes, which is interesting. Kind of odd if you think about it, because he just started his solo career. Randy had just died, which I had tickets to see that tour with Randy, but it was postponed because he had died, so I seen it with Brad Gillis. But anyway, that's another story. But the tone on this album really, really inspired me, and I couldn't find it for the longest time. So once I moved from Montreal to Toronto in I guess it was about '84. Up to that point, I'd been playing for a few years. We didn't have a lot of money, and back then we didn't have what we have now, which is all these different companies, with amp modeling and, that you can get the Fender tone and Marshall, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. Back then it was cheap amps and a distortion pedal. So you can only go so far with that as far as trying to achieve a tone that you've heard and you're inspired by. But anyway, you try to emulate it. So anyways, once we moved to Toronto, then I got my first Marshall amp, which it was extremely exciting. It was like my first piece of great amp gear. And so basically, I was able to get some cool tones out of this. Actually, the first one that I did buy was, and I don't think they even make these anymore, which was a 4x10 cabinet. I don't think they make those now. They might, but you couldn't achieve the right bottom end for this kind of tone, the more heavier, aggressive metal tones with a 4x10 cabinet. The bass response just wasn't right. It wasn't there. You couldn't compensate by turning up the bass. It wasn't like that. You had to have the right construction of cabinet and size to achieve that tone initially without the EQ on an amp. So, but I tried. That was my starting point. I had a 4x10 cabinet and a what they call the MOSFET head by Marshall, which was transistor. So there was a double whammy for you. Between the 4x10 size of the Marshall cabinet and the MOSFET head, the bottom end just wasn't right. So, but I tried my best at the time, and then I moved on to buying a tube Marshall head, 100 watt, and a 4x12 cabinet. So I was getting closer, but still not achieving that particular tone that I was inspired by initially on the Ozzy album, which I later learned was through Mesa Boogie amps. I never got into boogies. They're always $1 million. Great amps though. But I kept experimenting with different, the people that know with Marshall heads, or probably any kind of company, it might be the same model of head, they all sound slightly different. There's no complete consistency. So I would go into music stores and plug in different heads of the same style and try to, oh yeah, that's a little closer, that kind of thing. But it wasn't until moving forward, without getting too drawn out with this whole thing, when I was at Megadeth, 2007 was where I got to the point where I was able to achieve the tone and have the right gear to get it, which was the GSP 1101 by Digitech. And I still use this device to this day. It's great in many ways, very user-friendly, and I was able to achieve that tone that I'd sought after for many years, as well as great switching capabilities, clean tones. All the effects are immaculate. So anybody who's looking for something that's versatile but has a great quality, and when you're switching, playing live, and there's no gaps of silence, I highly recommend it. And also using the Control 2 unit, which is the unit that you would use with the GSP. It plugs in with the Ethernet cable, I believe. That's really where I got to the point where I was really happy with my tone, and especially being in Megadeth, I thought it was a really good. It was fitting for the style of the band, which requires a tight distortion, kind of chainsaw type of rhythm tone. So once I got the GSP 1101 by Digitech, that's really where it got to the point where I was able to achieve all the tones that I wanted to, especially again like in Megadeth, where it was, it was called for that kind of tight rhythm, as well as lead tones with delays and stuff like that. I was able to achieve everything I wanted in one package, and I like things that are more simplistic. I hate manuals. So I like to, just kind of plug in and, for the most part, plug in and play. So this unit gave me all of that. So